Yes, 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 yes. Good evening, everybody. This is Dubem Okoye again. I hope you all had a good day. Yes, today I had a very good day. It was pretty relaxed and chilled. Because I remember in my last video where I was telling you how my day was stressful and hectic. Well, today was a good day. And you just have one of those days. It can be good and bad, so your day can change. Anyways, without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So before I discuss about my case study, the Home Depot for consulting for B2B pipelines, before I really talk about the requirements and go into a little bit of detail, I just want to discuss with you a list of accomplishments, things that I've achieved, and also give you a brief background about myself. So without further ado, let's go. So, before I start off, I want to talk about a quote that I put up. And the quote is, to get into that desired position, you have to be in that position. Now, you all might be thinking that this is a repetitive, but if you actually read it again a few times, hopefully it will make sense to you. So, essentially, what this means is that it's all about having experience. So, ultimately, that if you want to get into that position, say, for example, if you want to get into that cloud position, you have to be in that position because, like, for example, in a cloud job, you're going to be doing particular tasks on a day-to-day basis. For example, setting up Kubernetes, solving problems for businesses, solving problems for organizations through Kubernetes, Docker's, Cloud, Terraform. So it's better to be in that position so that way you're better prepared for what you'll be doing on a day-to-day basis. So that's what it's about. All right, let's talk about the accomplishments, my current accomplishments of things I've done. So, I have worked on and deployed from scratch a production, a ready infrastructure that supports business to business transactions and developmental operations. I have also worked on creating a static website on AWS, and you can actually access the website on dubemspathway.info. So, about me, I'm strongly passionate about cloud computing as I'm so fascinated with the power of adopting cloud automation tools to enable businesses to enhance productivity, scalability, efficiency, and performance. So, as you can see, I'm a big enthusiast of cloud and I always want to pursue my cloud and take it further and just take it to the next level. So, let's get started with the requirements and objectives. So, the client request was they requested for an SFTP utilization for secure data transfer. And in case you're wondering what SFTP stands for, it simply stands for Simple File Transfer Protocol. So, what that essentially means is that the client wants the data transfers to be done securely. So that sums up in a nutshell, pretty much. Okay, moving on. The client also wanted the components to be open only to authorized personnel, principles of least privilege. They wanted all data to be highly available regardless of frequency of use, and also it must support current architecture without any disruptions to automations in place. They also wanted private architecture with no public facing gateways. So that is access only through private encryption keys, SSH. So SSH, in case you wonder what that means, that's secure content shell. So everything has to be done private. So they're very security conscious. Nothing, no public access at all. So that's what it means. So the company request is for this to be easily replicable process to implement to other clients on any scale, secured access to an isolated environment, i.e., a virtual private cloud, which is like VPC. So when you hear virtual private cloud, you'll see VPC a lot. So if you see VPC, that basically means virtual private cloud. It has to be cost effective and sustainable. So cost effective in the sense that the deployment they want is the cheapest deployment, the smallest deployment to be made, but at the same time, users can still store their data, store large amounts of data, and not be so limited. So that's what it means. And it can be provisioned and deployed within a short cycle sprint. Also has to be fully operational and resource overutilization. So the things to consider when planning. So this is part of the project plan. It must have immediately priorities. So that is like development, deployment, that the timeline is short, built for sustainability and to meet client requirements, while architecture and remaining budget must leverage a KMS and authentication channels to prevent public access. And then for future implementations, that is it's easy to replicate, clone, cutting down on future deployment time, attach monitoring agent to ensure retrieval of data, notifies all relevant parties, example, pub and sub. So to sum it up in a nutshell, what that is just to be, again, like I mentioned before, cost effective, but at the same time, things have to be done efficiently as possible. So this project has to be completed within the shortest period of time as possible, but at the same time, you know, still saving money. So that's what the project's all about. And this is what I did. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So the alternatives. So the alternatives are HTTPS, which provides an encryption via transfer layer protocol, which is good, of course, because HTTPS, which is obviously secure. So it's a secure way of accessing the internet. However, the only thing is that it's public access via the internet, so that poses a risk. And obviously, as I mentioned before with the client, they don't want their data to be public. They don't want anyone being able to upload data to their deployment. So this poses a big risk, and therefore, at this point in time, I had to avoid it for the purpose of this project. So AS2, so that's the most popular method for B2B for electronic data interchange. That's effective. However, it's high maintenance overhead, and this requires special software and technical expertise. And based on my current client, they're operating on a very tight budget. They just want this project to be cost effective. So they don't want to be spending that kind of money. But as they start to scale up and give it time, when they start to become a large business, then of course this would be very useful for them and any businesses that's experiencing high rapid growth. Okay, another alternative is MFT. So that offers robust security measures like larger file transfers and automation. The disadvantage to that, of course, is that it's limited open source support, so it's prone to bugs and difficulty scaling with increasing data complexity. So it's cool. Of course, there's a lot of bugs, and of course, nobody really wants bugs. They want everything to run smoothly. No client. The last thing a client wants is to have everything set up and to be having bugs. So these are things you have to consider, especially with your client. It's very important to understand what the client wants. There's so many tools that you could use to make sure this pipeline is effective, but there are a lot of cons, and that could hinder and impact the business performance. So I've laid down the possible solutions. So you've got the AC2 instance, the S3 storage, Lambda, pub and sub. Then you've got the app engine, cloud function, S3 again, pub and sub. Then you've got BigQuery, cloud function, pub and sub. Then also you've got EC2 and S3. So yes, before we go, I just want to show you a lovely, beautiful diagram which explains the whole concept and sums up the whole scope of this project. So those that are tech savvy or those who are in the tech space will have an understanding or should have an understanding of what this diagram is about. But unfortunately, not everyone is in the tech space, and my audience is not only for those in the tech. Of course, I'm going to attract audience for those who are non-tech, so it's going to be complete gobbledygook. But me as a tech guy, I'm going to explain it to you, so don't worry if you're stuck. I'm going to just explain this in layman terms. So you've got the internal LB, and in case you're wondering, that just pretty much stands for load balancing, or you can call it load balancers. And then next to it, you have the IP address, which is 10.0.0.0/. So that is the IP address of the instance. So whenever you're starting up an instance, that will always get generated an IP address. And that's the IP address which you use to connect to that instance. So you can remote onto that instance, you could run SSH, you could upload files locally to the remote host. And again, yeah, in my previous videos, I did explain that as well. So you can always refer back to that. Okay, moving on to the next bit, which is port 22. And what we're telling it essentially is to allow it, because this is very important. We have to allow SSH. That is the pillar and backbone of this whole project. And it's very important because if we don't allow SSH, then it defeats the whole purpose of this project. This project is dead as dodo, to be honest. Because what SSH does is that it allows us to interact and send files locally and remotely. So what it is that interacting from the local host and to the remote host, back and forth, up and down, vice versa. So that's what it's all about. So SSH is very, very important. Okay. And then below that, what you have is IAM. IAM. So that stands for Identity Access Management. And what that is that is the list of users. So users that are going to be transferring files from their local hosts to the remote host. So this concept is very important because, of course, the client wants people to upload files. Of course, you want it to be private. You don't want it to be public, but you want a few people to carry out this job. So what the IAM is that it assigns permissions, so you can give it special permissions for specific users to be able to upload data to the bucket, because, and this is very important because they want this whole project to be secure. They don't want public access. You're basically restricting access. You're locking everything down, but of course, because there's an exception, you want a few people to be able to interact with the remote host. So you give them permission. So you explicitly just allow these two people. So if we go over to the left, you can see the computer. So it's linked to the computer. So that's basically the user that's using the computer. So they're gonna go onto a computer locally, and then they're gonna just interact with the remote host. So you have like two people. So you can have a number of people. So it all depends on the clients, how many people they want for this job, like how many people they need. All depends on the need of the project, what they really want to achieve. So for example, you might have an admin guy just inputting records, then you might have a data admin who needs to store critical data to the remote host. So you could assign specific and special permissions for that. Okay, so moving on to the next bit. Next to that, you've got key encryption authentication. So what that is very, very important. It just sums up the security. It's a definition of how a company should go about securing access. So what it is that you just don't want anyone. You don't want anyone to be able to access files just like that anyhow. You know, you have to include barriers. You have to add barriers to entry. So let me explain it in layman terms. So like, say for example, you're a cashier, right? You're working for a big supermarket, but your job is to open up the safe and make a record of all the cash that was made in the night, and make a record and provide to the manager the following morning. What it is that, so let's say example, you want to get into the safe, you want to access the cash. There'll be like a padlock. There must be a barrier. There must be like a padlock. There must be like a special code you have to put to be able to get into that safe. And that concept applies to this scope of the project. In order to access the remote host and transfer files locally to the remote host, you can't just do that without no security. You need to have some sort of encryption, and that is the backbone and the pillar of security. So the HTTPS and HTTP, so if you can see above, you've got that. So what that is the HTTP uses port 80, HTTPS uses port 443, and we've disabled that. So what that basically means is that because the client requested that we want this to be secure, we don't want public access. So it's very, very important that we disable this. So again, it all depends on the objectives, what the client wants to achieve. Of course, for some projects, some clients may need that. Okay, so next we have Storage API. So Storage API, what that is that it's just like an application program interface that connects a locally based application to a cloud-based storage. So again, as I was mentioning before, how people would transfer files from their local host to the remote host, that's what it is. So that's again very important. So again, all of these tools are very important, all important in their own different ways, but this is extremely vital because this is what allows connecting to your cloud-based storage. That's what it's all about, and that is linked to your S3 bucket folder. So the S3 bucket folder is the cloud based storage. So that's where all your files are going to get stored. So this is the critical stage. It's almost like the end product. So let's say, for example, you have your data admin teams. They're going to upload critical data from their local host, and then they're going to store it in the S3 bucket folder, which is the cloud-based storage, and the storage API is the buffer for that. That's an easy way for you to understand, again, especially those who are not tech savvy. So I hope that aspect helps. So you've got that one, and then it's also linked to the S3 bucket folder too. So again, that's also part of the storage API, and then you can have another bucket, another folder as well within that cloud based storage. And again, the storage API acts as that buffer too. So it allows you to store files and like upload your data. And then that is linked to the monitoring side of things. So what the monitoring does is that it literally records every action you take. So it provides a record of what the user's doing. So in that case, it could be like the user role. So for example, the data admin who's part of the IAM, who's given special and specific permissions to perform specific tasks. So it's monitoring that. So it's making a record of what they can do. Again, this is very secure, and we don't want anyone being able to carry out these tasks. But obviously, given the data admin or the administrators have the special permissions to carry out the tasks and eventually store files from the local host to the remote host. The monitoring basically is capturing all that, recording time and action of what's actually taking place. Lastly, before I finish, I wanted to go touch again on the key encryption authentication. So that's login. So again, that's very important. What that simply means is that it's making a log. It's keeping a log of that key. So to make sure that the person is able to log in securely. So yes, I hope this helps. I hope this all helps you. It's quite a bit lengthy, quite a bit to explain. I hope I was able to break it down in a way that you'd understand. Um, I understand that especially for those who are not tech savvy, you may not understand it, and it may take a while for you to for it to really sink in, for you to really understand what this means, what this diagram means, and the whole purpose of that diagram. But I just want to let you know, and I want to reassure you that my doors are always open. My door is always open to anyone. So if you feel the need to get more clarity, and if you want more understanding, and you want me to explain a bit further, or re-explain, or go over it again, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to go over this with you. Like, I can do this with a group session. I can also do it on a one-to-one basis. So that wraps everything up. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you managed to get something out of this. I just want to thank you for your time, taking out the time to really grasp and absorb this information. Stay tuned, and I can't wait to fill you in on the next one. Something to take out of this. Remember my quote: if you want to get that desired position, you have to be in that position. All right, without further ado, time for me to say goodbye. Bye bye for now. Peace out.